dang girl, like you are a black woman. Why are you doing this? Why are you treating people this way? Hi, my name is Maxine. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today I'm here to talk to you about Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. I am super excited to be giving you all this review. Please like this video if you haven't already and subscribe, and stay tuned if you'd like to hear my thoughts on this wonderful, wonderful book. Okay, so this book was written by Britt Bennett. She is a fairly young writer, only 31, originally from Southern California. She's African American, and she's really, honestly, in my opinion, a trailblazer. Her first book, called The Mothers, was published in 2016 and received lots of recognition. It was a New York Times bestseller, and Vanishing Half is only her second novel, and it's been anywhere. I feel like if you've been in a bookstore or a library or any place where they sell literature, you've seen this book. Like, she is really doing it, and I'm so excited to support this writer and see what she does next. All right, so let's get into this book review. So, in short, I would say this book is about two twins that decide to leave starkly different lives and how their lives unfold based on decisions they made early on in their youth. The timeline of this book takes course over several decades and multiple generations. It starts in the late 1950s and ends up around the 1990s, and you follow multiple generations. I really enjoy that type of storytelling, just to see like how the characters and their children and family age over the years and progress and change, and how the original main characters have influence on those other characters as well. Another great book that follows multiple generations and kind of weaves that type of dynamic together is Homegoing by Yagyasi. I highly, highly, highly recommend you check out that book if you haven't already. It's one of the fictional books that really honestly got me excited about reading. So yeah, definitely check that book out. You won't regret it. This book also sheds light into the kind of untold history, I would say, of passing for white. So one of the twins ultimately ends up passing for white. I feel like in my learning, I've heard about like, oh, there were certain black people who could pass for white, but never heard anything beyond that, and never heard like a personal story of like, yeah, when you pass for white, you have to abandon your family, or you have to make all these decisions, or like different close calls where you think you're gonna get caught, and kind of the fear and emotion that involves around that. And this book gives a really in-depth presentation of that, which was really, really interesting to read and really different. So like I said before, the book is about two twins, Stella and Desiree Vignes, or Vignes. The book is set in a small fictional town in Louisiana, and I feel like to really paint the picture of these characters, Britt Bennett did a great job of the setting and really discussing the details and the history of this place, the history of these people, and how colorism was such a big factor in this town. Literally everyone in the town was really, really fair skin, light skin. There were no like regular colored black people, and they really valued themselves on that. And you can see how colorism plants this seed in both of the twins, and how it kind of goes different ways for each of them. I don't want to give away too much about this book, but I do want to discuss some of the main themes I noticed. The first big theme I noticed was choices and rebellion, and how decisions the characters make will affect their later years. So the first big choice that was made was the twin that decided to pass for white. That choice set her life on a path to where she was isolated from the rest of her family, and she was also constantly living in a bit of fear. The fear of getting caught as a black woman posing for white, the fear of her family not trusting her, her family disowning her, and also just like the emotional toll it takes to live a complete secret life without your twin, who was literally her other half. Family was another big theme I noticed. The two twins kind of start out in a very close-knit family. It's just them and their mom. Their father was lynched when they were really young, so they kind of had this very small unit where they had to fend for themselves, and they live again in this sheltered town where everyone is the same skin tone, everyone thinks the same, they think they're better than other Black people. When the twin decided to leave this town, it really made me think about family and how she decided to start her own life without them and kind of leave her whole life behind. Another character does that as well. His name is Reese. He is a transgender character, actually, and he decides to leave his family behind to become who he really is. Perception was another theme that was really packed throughout this book. The first point of perception is like this twin, Stella, has decided to become a white woman. So she has to be very cognizant of how people perceive her. Her mannerisms, her confidence has to change. Her whole body posture and energy has to change and be this prominent figure that was once used to kind of disappearing in the background amongst white people. Another example of perception was Jude, who is Desiree's daughter. She is very dark-skinned, and she ends up living in Mallard and having to come up in this small community that sees her as less than. They see her as dirty, they see her as ugly, and this idea of perception that the town has put on her plays out in her life and in her lack of confidence and in her focus on school to kind of stay in the background and realize that she's not such an important person just because of her skin, just because of how the town perceives her. I think colorism is a topic that is constantly in discussion and in rotation, especially on Twitter or Clubhouse or Facebook or different commentary videos or on YouTube even. So this book, talking about passing for white, was a really different entrance into colorism and how colorism affects a generation of people and the mindset of even an entire town. That's something that was just insane. I don't think we're at a point in society where people don't make negative assumptions about someone's skin color, but I hope one day we will progress and advance, because it's really ridiculous that the color of someone's skin impact how they operate in this world. I think the final and actually the main theme of this book is vanishing, and I had a great discussion with my friend on this theme, and we found that not only is Vanishing half about the vanishing of Stella, the twin who decides to pass her white, it's also about so many other characters that vanish and settings that vanish as well. A big example of vanishing that I didn't even think about, my friend actually mentioned this to me and blew my mind, but it's the town Mallard, because in the end of the book, spoiler alert, you realize that Mallard isn't even a real town. It's not incorporated in any of the Louisiana state maps, and they end up having to combine it with an actual town that's real. So this town that has had so much weight on the lives of so many people ends up becoming not important at all. It's not even real. There are lots of other examples of vanishing, but I don't want to spoil too much, but I will say pay attention to how the different characters vanish and different instances of vanishing beyond Stella and Desiree's relationship. So overall, I really enjoyed this book. I feel like there's a lot of twists and turns, and this book definitely keeps you guessing throughout, and it was an exciting read. I think my only critique were some of the characterizations. So my main critique actually is Jude. So Jude is Desiree's daughter, but I feel like we never really get to know her. We see her as this track star and medical student, but we don't learn a lot about her desires, her wants and needs, and also her struggles, because she moves across country to California, and you don't really hear about like just her social interactions and building up her confidence as this dark-skinned woman who grew up in this village that told her she was less than, that she was ugly. And we kind of get pieces of that in her relationship with Reese, but I would have liked to see more of that. I also wish that Jude was reunited with her father. Her father was abusive to her mother, so I totally get not giving him any bigger point in the story because of that. But there's a point where they mention that her father had 3 sons, and her father used to run track as well. I thought that Jude would end up connecting with one of her brothers or something. I don't know. That would have been really cool in my opinion. Some of the passages about Stella were definitely tough to read. Like, Stella is literally a black woman that has to be white. She has to sustain white supremacy, basically. And the passages where she makes certain decisions and decides to be a very meek woman, which I get, like, it's for her safety, but it's also like, dang girl, like, you are a black woman, why are you doing this? Why are you treating people this way? So that was really frustrating. But again, like, for a book to make you mad, like, it's definitely done its job. Like, there's conflict, there's questioning, there's drama, there's everything. I also want to acknowledge how amazing it was that there was a transgender character in this book. I can't remember any book I've read that's like contemporary popular fiction where a main character is trans and you learn just about their coming of age and their personality and how the decisions they had to make early on, the difficulties they went through, the hardships. And me as a straight black woman, I really don't know those type of stories. I'm not connected to those stories, or I don't hear about those stories. So to read about this in a book that's also about black history was really interesting. Throughout this book, there's a lot of passages about twin dynamics and how twins have to operate in society. And me as a person who is not a twin, I've never really thought about that, but it was really interesting to hear that insight of how twins think and how they feel perceived in the world. So closing this review, I want to read a passage that really spoke to me about this. This is on page 234. Sometimes being a twin had felt like living with another version of yourself. That person existed for everyone, probably an alternative self that lived only in the mind, but hers was real. Stella rolled over in bed each morning and looked into her eyes. Other times it felt like living with a foreigner. Why are you not more like me? She'd think, glancing over at Desiree. How did I become me and you become you? Maybe she was only quiet because Desiree was not. Maybe they'd spent their lives together modulating each other, making up for what the other lacked. Like how at their father's funeral, Stella barely spoke, and when someone asked her a question, Desiree answered instead. At first, it unnerved Stella, a person speaking to her and Desiree responding, like throwing her own voice. But soon she felt comfortable disappearing. You could say nothing, and in your nothingness, feel free. All right, I feel like that passage was super interesting, and there's so many passages like this where you really get to hear the nuance of what these twins are thinking and how their separation impacts their lives in multitudes of ways. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope this will encourage you to buy this book. If you end up reading it, please comment below. I would love to hear your thoughts on this book. Please comment, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed this review, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.